Reuters today has a long, blood-curdling report on violent threats and physical intimidation that have been unleashed in recent months, not just against elections officials, high-ranking people like secretaries of state, but even just volunteer election workers, low-level and mid-level poll workers. The headline from Reuters today, you can see there, Trump-inspired death threats are terrorizing election workers. The wife of Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger showed these text messages that she received after her husband, Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, resisted Trump's personal demands to him that Raffensperger find enough votes in Georgia for Trump to win that state. This one, somebody who filled in their name as Raffensperger at revenge.us reads, quote, "You and your family will be killed very slowly." Another message Mr. Raffensperger's wife received was purported to be from America at Jesus.com. And it says, quote, "Please pray. We plan for the death of you and your family every day. I'm sorry." Another one that purports to be from murder at Raffensperger.com. It says, quote, "Keep opposing the audit of Fulton County's 2020 election ballots, and somebody in your family is going to have a very unfortunate incident." Those were all sent to Brad Raffensperger's wife. Mr. Raffensperger and his family and his staff viewed these and other threatening messages to his wife as an effort to try to coerce him into resigning from his job. He's not resigning. He's in fact running for re-election in Georgia against a Trump-backed challenger who is running his whole campaign on the Stop the Steal conspiracy theory. But the harassment, even for a high-ranking official like that, has gone beyond threats in text messages. This is from Reuters today. Quote, in late November, the Raffensperger family went into hiding for nearly a week after intruders broke into the home of their daughter-in-law, an incident the family believed was intended to intimidate them. That evening, people who identified themselves to police as Oath Keepers, a far-right militia group that supported Trump's bid to overturn the election, they were found outside the Raffenspergers' home. Reuters reporter Linda So writes, quote, "Trump's baseless voter fraud accusations have had dark consequences for U.S. election leaders and workers, especially in contested states such as Georgia, Arizona, and Michigan. Some have faced protests at their homes or been followed in their cars. Many have received death threats. In Georgia, people went into hiding in at least 3 cases, including the Raffenspergers. Arizona Secretary of State Katie Hobbs, a Democrat, told Reuters that she continues to receive death threats now. Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, a Democrat who faced armed protesters outside her home in December, she says she is also still getting the threats. And in Georgia, election workers, from local volunteers all the way up to senior administrators, continue even now to endure regular harassing phone calls and emails from Trump supporters today. One email sent January 2nd to officials in nearly a dozen counties threatening to bomb polling sites. Quote, "No one at these places will be spared unless and until Trump is guaranteed to be POTUS again." The local official in charge of the mail-in ballot operation in Fulton County, Georgia, received numerous racist death threats. He's seen here doing his job at a ballot counting facility in Georgia. One night, strangers showed up at his house. They identified themselves as their new neighbors. They wanted to meet him, knocked on the door. He knew nobody had moved into his neighborhood recently. He did not have any new neighbors. He did not open the door. That guy's boss, the elections director in Fulton County, was bombarded with threats after President Trump at a rally in Georgia showed a video clip of him and accused him of tampering with ballots and committing a crime. Quote, "Police were posted outside that official's house and office after he received a detailed threat in late December in which the caller said he would be killed by firing squad." That Fulton County elections director has worked in elections for 22 years. He's also volunteered as an elections observer overseas. He said of his experience dealing with Trump supporters right now, quote, "It seems like we were descending into this third world mentality. I had never expected that out of this country." Election supervisors now telling Reuters they fear high numbers of the temporary workers who regularly staff polling sites won't return for any future votes because they want to avoid harassment and threats and potentially violence. One polling manager telling a hair-raising story from the night of the January Senate runoff in Georgia. This is amazing. After the polls closed, she was, quote, driving to deliver ballots to an elections office in Bartow County, a prominently white Republican district in northwestern Georgia. The polling manager, who is black, was traveling with her daughter, also a poll worker hired temporarily for the election. On a dark rural 2-lane road, they noticed they were being followed by an SUV. The manager called 911 as her daughter sped toward town, with the SUV nearly running them off the road. They were followed by that SUV for about 25 minutes. The dispatcher, the police dispatcher on the line with them, helped guide them to a parking lot where officers met them and escorted them to the election office. Months later, the polling manager says she still suffers panic attacks from the incident, and she may stop working elections altogether. Again, that reporting today from Linda So at Reuters. I mean, this is the stuff of nightmares, right? I mean, a nightmare for election officials and poll workers, a nightmare for democracy. And these are the people who make democracy function, right? These are the people who, like, check you in when you show up to vote and make sure that if you have any problem, you have somebody to ask for help, and who make sure you get to the right precinct, right? I mean, anytime you've ever showed up to vote in person, it's usually elderly folks, it's kind of church ladies and stuff who do this sort of thing. Those are the people who are now the subject of death threats and conspiracy theories by Trump supporters, trying to intimidate them out of doing their jobs, trying to blame things on them that they have absolutely nothing to do with. You cannot have a functioning democracy if running elections or staffing the polling sites means taking your life into your own hands. And it was interesting to see today in his big speech at the Great Hall of the Justice Department today, the new Attorney General Merrick Garland spoke directly to this issue, to his credit.
We have not been blind to the dramatic increase in menacing and violent threats against all manner of state and local election workers, ranging from the highest administrators to volunteer poll workers. Such threats undermine our electoral process and violate a myriad of federal laws. The criminal section of the Civil Rights Division, together with the department's national security and criminal divisions, the 93 United States attorneys, and the FBI, will investigate and promptly prosecute any violations of federal law.
Attorney General Merrick Garland speaking today, delivering what was billed as a major speech on voting rights. And of course, everybody was waiting, fruitlessly as it turned out, to hear what he was going to say about the new scandal that is engulfing the Justice Department over the latest revelations of their behavior under President Trump, including this very disturbing new reporting about them seizing the communications records of members of Congress who were investigating President Trump at the time. We're going to have more on that coming up. But when it comes to elections, when it comes to protecting our elections themselves, I mean, you can talk about it in abstract terms. It's a policy thing. And apparently, according to Attorney General Garland today, it's going to be more of a legal thing than it has otherwise been. He talked about upping enforcement plans on part of the federal Justice Department, increasing the number of lawyers working on voting rights enforcement, going after states that either pass new laws or enact new practices that are discriminatory or otherwise illegal in terms of the way they impede people's right to vote. But as much as this is a philosophical issue for us as a democracy, as much as it is a theoretical issue in terms of our values, as much as it may become a source of litigation, legal fights, if the Justice Department, in fact, takes this up the way that Attorney General Garland promised today. It's real life right now for people whose life's work is ending, for people who have spent their lives working on the nonpartisan, technocratic administration of good elections in this country. People who are being run out of this type of work on a one-by-one basis, even people working at a low level or at the county level, being picked off one by one by a violent mob, attacking them, threatening them, in the case of Tommy Gong in San Luis Obispo County, showering them with racist abuse. This is not a hypothetical thing. This is not a potential danger to our elections in the future. This is happening right now, person by person, all across the country.